Today's a special day for me, so I'm going to review one of the greatest movies I've ever seen. Se7en is one of those films that is as near to perfect as I can imagine it to be. While I certainly don't like all of David Fincher's work, I will say he made a masterpiece with this film. For those of you who don't know this movie, Se7en is a very dark film that follows two detectives as they pursue a mysterious serial killer whose victims are targeted for their specific sins. The killer, whose name is later revealed to be John Doe, devises specific ways to kill his victims, turning the sin against the sinner. As you can imagine, he is going by the original list of the 7 deadly sins. The sins are gluttony, greed, sloth, lust, pride, envy, and wrath. While the killer is kept in the shadows for most of the film, the plot follows the two detectives. Will Somerset, played by Morgan Freeman, is an older man who has become jaded and pessimistic after a lifetime of seeing unspeakable crimes. Just like in such movies as No Country for Old Men, Se7en comments on how crime seems to be getting worse, and more importantly, how people embrace apathy to cope with life. Somerset plans to retire and give in to the apathy that he sees all around him, but he's talked into helping out with this last case. Enter David Mills, a cocky young detective played by Brad Pitt. Mills is much less experienced than Somerset due to his age, and he maintains a much more optimistic view on life. This is challenged constantly, which leads to one of the best moments in the film. Mills and Somerset are sitting in a bar, demoralized from their latest uncovering of John Doe's work, and they start talking about each other's opinions of the case and life in general. After Somerset gives a monologue involving people's embracing of apathy, Mills confidently remarks that Somerset is only talking this way because he's quitting the force and wants to feel that it's justified. Mills then states that he does not agree with Somerset's views. Then he repeats himself with less assurance. And then, after another pause, he admits that he can't agree. Because how can anyone believe such things about society and still remain hopeful and optimistic? The relationship between Mills and Somerset is one of the most fascinating parts of the movie, with both actors giving career-high performances. They avoid becoming just another pair of buddy cops, but they also avoid becoming walking metaphors with no personality. Somerset is calm and cynical, while Mills is hot-headed and idealistic. We see them clash, work together, and eventually develop a respect for each other. One aspect to their relationship outside of the investigation is Mills' wife, Tracy. Played by Gwyneth Paltrow, Tracy is repulsed and horrified by the new city that Mills has been transferred to. When she finds out about Somerset being Mills' new partner, she strikes up a rapport with him and sees him as someone neutral to confide in. In yet another one of the many brilliant moments of this film, she and Somerset have a conversation concerning a very sensitive issue that Tracy's worrying about. Paltrow's role is minor in terms of screen time, but is ultimately very necessary to the plot. Another prominent supporting role in the film is Somerset's superior, Captain Lucas, played by R. Lee Ermey. Captain Lucas is portrayed as a competent man who does his job, but ultimately doesn't have the patience for Somerset's unorthodox approaches to crime scenes. When the first murder victim is found and Somerset sees it as the start of something horrible, Lucas prefers a more simplistic explanation. However, he admits that Somerset is a brilliant detective, and it would be a terrible loss for the force if he retired. The film's atmosphere works impeccably. The dreariness of the city is added to with the constant rain, the scenes of crimes are covered in shadows, and the disgusting details of the murders are alluded to, described, and sometimes directly shown. Many scenes are hard to watch, even by our desensitized standards, and the twists and turns that the plot takes will doubtless leave people jumping in their seats. But now for perhaps the best part of this movie, the villain. John Doe is perhaps the greatest human villain that I've ever seen in a movie. As Somerset classically describes him at one point, he's methodical, exacting, and worst of all, patient. The fact that he's been planning all this for a long time can be credited to show how dedicated he is to these murders and the statement that they make. The genius of this film is that we don't see Doe himself for most of the movie. Instead, we see aftermaths of the murders, shadows of him running away from the cops, and sometimes the people he punishes are not always killed. And as one terrifying scene shows, being killed would almost seem preferable to what Doe has planned for them. In true honoring of Doe's secretive nature, David Fincher made sure that the actor who plays John Doe was not credited in the opening of the film, nor was his star power used in advertisements. I too have chosen to keep John Doe's identity a secret, even though I'd love to go on about how amazing the scenes featuring him are. But I won't, because this way it makes his reveal in the third act all the more impactful and legendary. Se7en works as a very dark thriller, with a payoff so legendary that most of you have probably heard it referenced to before, even if you haven't seen the movie. Se7en is an example of how great crime thrillers can mix such philosophical themes of ethics and morality with gruesome details of murder and human suffering. And there's no true answer to the questions that it brings up. Different people will react differently to it even as they enjoy the thrilling tale of these two detectives hunting a murderer. To paraphrase John Doe himself, it's a film that will be puzzled over and studied and followed forever.